Well, that was a barn burner, if you know what I mean, I guess, or something like that. Anyways, welcome into another edition of the Third Line Jawn Flyers postgame show. I'm James Scorsese here alongside my brother from another, Joey Marks, on this very important. I would say Flyers win, but no, the Flyers lose in overtime after the Penguins came back and won 5-4 over at PPG Paints Arena. But overall, Joe, how are you doing tonight on this? Guess you could say Bloody Mary night, I guess.
Yeah, well, I was going to come in and be all fired up after the first period and say
Yep.
this was a Keystone clash, but it was more like the Keystone collapse. The only thing that wasn't popping off like a gas main in West Philly today was the
Jesus.
Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, damn, things just popped off in Pittsburgh tonight.
Yes, they did. And the other thing about it too is they had a 4-2 lead, and I thought, okay, there was no way they could have like got Pittsburgh back into this game, but man, it was just like just a oh man, I'm just
First time Pittsburgh ever came back from a 3-goal deficit in the season.
wow.
So there you go. We're 61 games into this season, and this is the first time they've come back from a 3-goal deficit. And this is not the Pittsburgh team that we've known to understand and love. Well, depends on who you're talking to. You're not talking to me when you're talking about love. That's for damn sure.
No.
Um, but this Pittsburgh team used to be elite with Malkin and Crosby,
Sure.
threatening. And man, we're gonna unpack a lot in this game. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, we do. I mean, there was a lot of scoring and a lot of like little less time. But before we go any further, we got a comment here on my dad, Joe Scores. It checks in and says, "No way they should give up 3 unanswered goals and lose that one."
Yeah.
That's more agree than that. But let's get into the highlight reel of this game because the Flyers. It looked like it was going to go into the favor of it, and also our good friend Nate Leon checks in, says you are playing with you are playing good and give up 3+ goals in a lead is no excuse whatsoever. I agree that is terrible, and I do agree that's in the words of Charles Barkley would say it was terrible. I'm gonna admit too.
Who leaves the ice angrier? That the
The goal,
starting goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins, you like
yeah,
destroyed his hockey stick, or John Tortorella? Because I would almost assume it'd be John Tortorella right now.
I am with you. Yeah. Um. So let's dive into this game before we get it back into the comments. So basically, it was the same kind of commonality that the Flyers started out early on in the first game of the home and home. And it looked to me, it was like Noah Cates getting off to a really good start here, got off to a 1-0 lead for the Flyers. Kind of like the same similar shot he took against Nedeljkovic on the first meeting on Tuesday night, and it gave the Flyers a 1-0 lead. And that was basically a good positive going into the game, but the list will go on and on. But the Flyers had a 1-0 lead from Noah Cates.
Yeah, Noah Cates and that line, I feel like a broken record when I say this, but like it feels like that line just is a constant in some ways. When this team is like full steam ahead, that
Mm-hmm.
line is full steam ahead. And it's like I said before, James, if someone like these guys like a Noah Cates and a Forrester and a Hathaway and people Bobby Brink and whatnot, those guys start to kind of like, speed towards being able to put the puck in the net.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like TK and Tippett and Mitchkov and Coots, those guys are going to feast because like those guys are your stars, and if your supporting cast is putting up good numbers like Noah Cates is, 3 goals in 2 games. I mean that's really good from the youngster.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to sneeze about that, too. I
Mm.
mean, because you think about it, I mean, he's been playing really good hockey so far, and also like a combination of many others like Bobby Brink along the way, and also maybe like a Matvey Michkov also. But Nate checks in again and says it's time to get rid of the torts. Enough is enough about that. So I'm not gonna
I
go
don't
there.
know because like if
Yeah, I don't know what to say, man.
here's the thing. Ordinarily, I would not agree with you.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, but the outcome of that game has swayed my opinion. In the ESPN Plus's presentation or Disney Plus presentation,
Yeah.
well, one of the things that they did was a behind the scenes with Torts.
Hmm.
Uh, and he talked about arrogance and play with arrogance,
Sure.
play aggressive and stay, control the neutral zone.
Hmm.
And you could preach a lot as a coach, but if you and the Flyers, not for nothing, came out and they played with a lot of arrogance.
Yep.
The Pittsburgh Penguins didn't get their first shot on goal until 14 minutes into the first period. So they played with a lot of arrogance. It's sustainable commitment to your strategy is key. And that's where I think Torts loses. I've said this and brought this up in past post games, James, and
Hmm.
one day you're gonna have to explain this to me. There's a timeout that coaches have.
Hmm.
Peter Laviolette was iconic for using those timeouts
Nothing short of amazing.
in best moments, in
Yes.
like the best moments. John Tortorella, no, I don't need it. That just does not seem like a very good way, especially if you start to see your team backslide.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I mean, it was like one of those things that, like you alluded to with the Peter Laviolette thing. It's just like when things were starting to like spoil out of control. I guess he started to take a timeout and say, "Okay, let's tone it down a little bit. Let's try to take a breather," kind of like what the Eagles did, like with the
Mhm.
Super Bowl, and just say, "Okay, let's take a little bit of a breather." Obviously, I thought that would happen with the Four Nations face-off too, because like that 2 week off, I'm thinking like, okay, now they can like start to recharge and start to regroup and also start to play with a lot more power here. And frankly, I mean, like you even said, Joe, about what Peter Laviolette did was absolutely spectacular on his part, was that he found a way to like call a timeout at the right time when the team was much needed to. And also that's the thing too. Like Nate checks in again, says, remember that timeout against Boston down 3-0 in game 7, and
Yep.
it was a great
Made
comeback. And
all the difference.
made all the
Made all
difference.
the
All you
difference.
needed was one goal, and that's
All you need is to sometimes especially with a young team,
hmm
you need to sometimes settle the youngsters down. They're playing with too much amped up speed and they're not playing with enough focus.
yeah,
And John Tortorella yells loudly enough that I'm sure that if he called timeout, they wouldn't have to go very close to the bench to hear what he has to say.
absolutely,
Um, Understand something. This is an indictment on John Tortorella because a guy who's been in the industry this long
yeah,
should be able to know how to snap his guys out of a backslide that the Flyers were in at the end of this game.
yeah. It's a very good point. I mean, you think about it. I mean, it was just one of those things that I mean, I like Torts. I respect him. I thought he was a good hire when the Flyers brought him in to probably bring like that Laviolette fire to like they had like play with some jam, if you know what I mean. But at the same
Mhm.
time, it's just that yeah, dude.
You
It's
can come out like gangbusters like they did tonight.
sure, yeah.
We're going to get to the second goal, and I believe that was Owen Tippett.
Yeah,
You
that was
know,
in the second period. Yeah.
yeah, no, that was first period.
Oh, first period. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
right. That's right. So in this first period, Tippett like continued to go make basically doing whatever he can to do a great job on that first line with Mitch Cobb and also Sean Couturier. And like you mentioned, Joe, he made it a 2-0 lead for the Orange and Black.
yeah, Mitchkoff with an assist on that, an important, nice little dish to Owen Tippett and a deflection off of a pen to go in. It made it 2-0. So at that point, you have all the momentum going into the first intermission. You have all the momentum. At that point, John Tortorella has to say, okay, congratulations. All right, we got one, we got two more. We got to keep the momentum. We got to keep the arrogance. We got to
Yep.
keep the aggression. But then the second period happened, and not only did the wheels fall off, almost seemingly it felt like the house caught on fire, and all the Flyers did not know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like a train wreck and a fire and just an accident waiting to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it too, is that before we get into the third goal for the Flyers, though, let me get into the two goals that the Penguins scored in a matter of 30 seconds. It just like, I mean, right then and there, I said to myself, this ought to be not. I mean, the Tomasino goal was a little bit unexpected, but the second goal by Erik Karlsson, I mean, Sam Ersson has to stop that puck, Joe.
Look, we'll tap into the third period, the third goal, which was scored by Mitchkov on a nice little backhander. Here's the thing with that goal by who did you say it was?
I think it was Carlson that
Carlson. That's right.
made it like a
That
2-2. I
that
think
goal
it's
by
2-2, was it,
Carlson.
right?
Yeah, that Carlson goal. The thing that irked me about that is that Erison stopped Kevin Hayes in the
Mhm.
first period
Yeah,
with something very similar,
right.
like and closer to him. So he stopped him with the pad. Erison in the first, I would say, 25 to 30 minutes of this game played well.
They
And
did.
then again, it's like I said, the wheels fell off, the house caught on fire, and no one knew what to do. And it just felt like the Flyers were playing against themselves.
Mhm.
Um, Despite all of that, the fourth goal for the Flyers was again scored by another Mitchkov goal that gave him 19 on the season. This guy is the leading score getter in the rookie class. Who needs that guy in Chicago? You got this
Yeah,
guy.
right.
But
Yeah,
here's the bottom line, and we're always going to come back to this. If you don't have a good goaltender, if you don't have strong defensive men that can forecheck and clear the puck, it doesn't matter how many good forwards you have,
right,
you're always going to be playing by a deficit, no
right,
matter if you're up.
right.
And that happened tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was really PO'd about more than anything is that the Flyers, right after they, like Carlson, like gave the Penguins momentum, like right back after like
Mhm.
Garnett halfway left the game. It was just like they got a little bit of momentum. I'm thinking, okay, now they're starting to feel like they have a cushion in front of them, and they made it a 4-2 lead. And then the Penguins once again made it a 4-3 lead, and then it's like, dude, these guys just won't go away.
And it was Carlson again with a one-timer,
Yes.
and this is a guy that he knows how to put the puck in the net, and like he knows how to be efficient with his shots.
Hmm.
And look, here's where I started to get worried.
Hmm.
Even when we went up 4-2 and Hathaway went out,
Hmm.
it didn't seem like the Flyers got upset. They
Right.
didn't seem to get angry enough.
Hmm.
TK didn't start poking around and say, "You took our guy? Okay, cool. Hey, Sid the kid, come on over here."
Right.
Like
Retaliation.
retaliation. Like that kid got annihilated.
Yeah.
And we could go on and on about whether that should have been a major or a state of minor, like it
Right.
was called a
Right.
minor on the ice. But the thing about it is that when you have a young player like Hathaway go down, damn it, you have to kind of stick up for your guy. Like
I agree.
I played hockey, and I only got to like the semi-pro junior kind of level, but and
Right.
I was never a scorer. But like, was I always sent there with orders if one of our star players or one of our players got hurt with a cheap shot? Yeah, of course. The coach doesn't say, "Hey, go kill that guy." They just give a nod and say 52 or whoever the guy's
Yeah.
jersey number is. And they look at you and they say the number, and now you know what your assignment is.
Right.
And your assignment is to make sure that that guy knows that ain't gonna fly.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna fly. And the Flyers didn't do that tonight. It's felt like ever since that Hathaway went out and the Mitchkov goal, the Mitchkov goal, second goal was due to the minor penalty after Hathaway got hurt. But
Yeah.
the thing about it is, it just didn't seem like that was enough of a momentum swing. It didn't seem like the Flyers were angry enough.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to like when you said about like a coach trying to tell you like who you got to keep a close eye on, like to see like obviously 14 was the guy that you had to keep
Mhm.
a close eye on. That's like probably going back to when the Flyers had like Scott Hartnell and they were going after somebody or maybe like a chemo team in here and
Yeah.
there. But yeah, I mean, there had to be some guy just to say, okay, you took out our guy. Now we got to take out one of your guys. Like obviously not, maybe like Crosby, for example, maybe Malkin, or maybe like Tomasino, like who's like the kind of like a similar player to Garnett Hathaway, and just say like, I mean, it's just that. I mean, I don't know, but
And this is
Nate's
a rivalry game.
yeah,
Let's be
it's a
real.
rivalry game.
Yeah,
Exactly,
like
exactly.
if this was the Eagles and the Cowboys,
Oh
and the
yeah,
Cowboys player knocked out one of our guys, you best believe people are throwing bows.
well,
Like
yeah,
you could best believe that people are getting in people's faces,
yeah,
and that's the difference. And like
yeah.
I get playing with your head straight, but it just felt like, despite that second goal by Mitchkov to go up 4-2, it just felt like the Flyers didn't regain control. It
Hmm.
felt like the Penguins still had all the control.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And Nate checks in again. Says, "Do you blame the terrible goals against on a
Mhm.
team's defense, or the goaltending?" So that's a good question. I mean, I guess I would say it's a little bit of both,
Yeah.
honestly, because you think about it. I mean, the defense giving up those kind of plays that the Penguins got in front of them, and obviously, and then the goaltender with Sam Mercer just like basically, I mean, yeah, I think it's a little portion, a little bit of both. But what about you, Joe?
When you have, it's both, but one works in tandem with the other.
Hmm.
And if a defensive players cannot clear the puck, or if they cannot forecheck enough to get players, the opposing players off the puck,
Hmm.
it's not going to do the goaltender any favors. And I can
Right.
tell you this: I applaud ESPN for their sound work, because I was listening to a lot of the sounds, and the way that they have it mic'd up on the ice, you could hear when it was like deflecting off the post and deflecting off the pads and stuff. There were
Yeah,
a lot of
I didn't notice
loose
that actually.
rebounds.
I mean, I'm gonna admit, I'm not gonna lie to you. The day and age of like the sports media about trying to
Yeah,
coddle one guy over another. I mean, it looked to me it was more like a love fest with the Penguins. I mean, but the sound effects were great, don't
yeah,
question about it. But
but
just the
it just
commentary was like a love fest. Gonna admit.
yeah, it was a lot to be desired.
Yeah,
But like the pucks deflected a lot off of Erison's pads, and you could tell.
yeah.
He wasn't able to gain control of the rebound, which is always dangerous. Now, if you're talking about what's the responsibility of the defenseman once there is a rebound, a loose enough rebound, if it comes out to you about 5 to 10 feet outside of the crease,
Hmm.
then you have to get your stick on it and get it to the boards, get it to the sideboards. It's not necessarily to always clear it out to ice it. It's to get it to the sideboards so you can have so your wingers can have a battle towards the blue line to get it cleared and maybe even have a break. But these defensemen just seem to be like in cement blocks.
Right.
And it's interesting because you talked about the commentary. In the beginning, they praised the Flyers a lot about their movement in the offensive zone. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds great. That all sounds great. But the
Hmm.
problem is, if there's no movement in the defensive zone, you're stuck. You're
Yes.
you're stuck in no motion where you can't get the puck and go.
Hmm.
You're on your heels constantly. And so for me, I think it's both. I think it has to be a tandem affair. And if it's not, then you're in trouble. Now we fast forward to the third period where Flyers up 4-3, and it didn't take long for the Pittsburgh Penguins to tie things up.
I just score. You beat me right to it. I was gonna say, speaking of ex, speaking of Flyers, like killers, like for the last handful, maybe 15, 20 years or so. So it was their own portion of Gino, like they call up in Pittsburgh, tying to score up at 4-4, and it looked to me right after that the Flyers. I think that was probably basically it. After that, I think after the Flyers had a 4-3 lead, and they said, okay, I guess when they had a 4-2 lead too, gonna admit, Joe, I think it was probably that they probably smelled themselves and said, we got this in the bag, and then out of nowhere they figure out, like, you
That's
still have
where
to play a full 60 minutes.
that's where I feel like the backslide started. They started to think that they snuffed out the Penguins' flame,
Right.
like their comeback, their fire.
Mm-hmm.
The Flyers felt like, hey, we stuffed them out. We got this. And that, as the one commenter said,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I would have disagreed with them ordinarily, but the way that this game turned out, I have to agree with them.
Right.
But that's where what that commenter said about Tortorella has to go is
Right.
absolutely correct. At 4-2, you have to take a timeout and say, okay, guys,
Let's take a
Mitch
breath.
Buff just got 2 goals in a row.
Yep.
You take a timeout, you put that line back on the ice.
Right.
You go and you take their neck and you don't stop. And that's on Torts. That's exactly what that is. That's on Torts.
I
You
agree.
take their heart as it is right then and there. They go down 3 again. Now you're getting closer to the end of the second period. Even with that Carlson goal at the end of the second period, if they were up by 3 and that made it 5-3, that would have made this game a whole lot different going into the third period.
Yeah.
And it just didn't. And it made this way too close for comfort. When Denny Malkin scored that tying goal, I was like, here we go.
Yep.
I was like, here we go. We just gave this team life, and they don't deserve it.
Nope.
And
And
I
what's
just
funny,
didn't
Joe?
understand it. Go ahead.
What's funny? I said to myself after that second period when they made it 4-3, I said to myself, like, if there is a way, I mean, the sad part about it too is that we should have scored more goals on a backup goaltender that I never even heard of it. I mean, obviously Nedeljkovic was bad, but I'm thinking like this guy, we made him look like Marc-Andre Fleury first, like, for God's sake. I mean, this guy looked like he was just. I mean, obviously you want to give them the Penguins wanted to change the momentum a little bit, but at least they found
23-year-old second round goaltender, second
Jesus,
rounder. Like
Jesus,
this kid, like he's not letting, like, yes, that's high to get a goaltender in the draft, and yes, he's young, but that should work at your favor, not at your
agreed,
detriment.
right? I agree. And the one thing I was really bothered by too is that, I mean, sure, I mean they had a 4-2 lead, but at the same time, you still gave the Penguins momentum. I'm not thinking like this was like one of those things that could really be an accident waiting to happen. And then it was like 4-3, then it was 4-4. And then right after that, I said to myself, like you said, like, oh God, here we go. Now we just gave them momentum and basically took. I mean, the one thing that was positive about it, if there's anything that to be positive about, that they got that all-inclusive 1 point, but
Yeah.
it didn't help us because you had 2 points in the bag.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing, and this is what's going to really hurt the Flyers down the stretch. You can all applaud that they got the 1 point. We can all applaud that because this is a rebuilding team, sure.
Sure.
Okay. But here's the thing. When you leave points on the table at the end of the season, when you're only 4 points short of making that 8th seed, you will feel that pain of not closing out these games that could have given you 2 points
Mm-hmm.
instead of 1.
Right.
And that's really where the Flyers are going to learn the tough lesson. That's where
Mm-hmm.
this is really going to hurt them most, is that they might fall just short of that 8th seed by 3 to 4 points. It's going to be a close margin.
Yeah.
And these games, like tonight, will be one of those games when we do a review of this season, will be one of those games that we will look back and say, this could have helped them.
Yeah, you gotta beat them while they're down, But it's kind of like that old announcer would say, "Bite the head once fed them." I guess something like in that
You have to
category.
have the killer instinct. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I get it, they're young, but you know what? That excuse is gonna wear thin. It is. And I get they're rebuilding. I get the patience, and I am being patient. But when you have look, You're in the NHL now, kids. This is the big time. So you have to play like a professional. So
Right.
I'm not going to make excuses for you guys.
Hmm.
Because if we're going to hold you guys at a standard, if I'm going to take a line from my guy number one and say, look, keep the main thing, and the
Right.
main thing is winning. Keep this standard the standard. The standard should be that you should not play this poorly if you're up at this level of hockey.
Right.
It's just it shouldn't happen. And look, I was gonna praise, like I said, I praised Erison in the first period, and we're gonna get to our grades in a minute. I praised Erison in the first period. By the third period, I was like, well, there goes that praise. Like that
Yeah.
guy just like completely failed me. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Like that's the guy I know. Like, okay, like you
There's that
stop.
Ayrton I know.
Yeah, it's like you start to come down to earth. It's like,
Yeah.
hmm, that's not the guy I know. Is that Harrison? And then the third period comes rolling around. You're like, oh yeah, that's Harrison. Okay.
Oh, yep. All right, let's get into our grades of the night as we get closer and closer to closing out here. So man, I had the script already planned out. Obviously, I was saying to myself after a very good game tonight, and I said to myself, "Damn, like just now instead of an A, it's like I don't want to sound like I'm being foofy here or quirky here,
No,
but it was not a great finish. It was
no.
just I look, I thought it was a very good 2 periods, maybe, but right then and there, I mean, given the Penguins' life, especially how bad they are, that's that's terrible. It's horrible. It's terrible.
No. So what do you give him?
I got to give them a D. I got to give them a D.
So look, you're not alone because here's the thing. I am right there in lockstep with you. For the first, this game tonight took over 60 minutes to solve. Okay.
Yeah.
The first 30 minutes of this game, I gave the Flyers an A.
Yep.
Okay, a strong A. And the last 30 minutes, I gave it an F. Not just because they lost, but because they lost in the form that they lost, the way that they
How
lost.
they lost. Yep.
Yes. It felt like they
Yeah.
it felt like they played like the 76ers did the other
Oh,
day.
dude.
In the final 30 minutes, it
You're not
felt like
wrong,
the
man.
Flyers played like the 76ers the last game.
Oh, Jesus.
So here's what I have to say. I'm going to grade them at an F.
You know,
Because you could get A for effort in the beginning of the game, but if you can't finish, and F stands for finish, if you can't finish, then you fail. So that's the bottom line. They did not finish. They had every opportunity to finish. They had every opportunity, and more so, because we've talked about this too on other shows.
you're right.
The Flyers are normally, they don't get out to a more than one goal lead. They
Mhm.
had a 3-goal, they had a 2-goal lead
In the bank. In the bank.
right in
Excuse
the
me.
bag.
Yeah, in the
All you had
bank.
to do was hold on to that insurance and play hard. That's it.
Hmm.
That's all you had to do.
Right.
But they lost their focus, they lost their edge, and they let a team that didn't deserve to win tonight to pull off the victory.
Yeah, you know what? And on second thought, I would say D, but I gotta go right there with you. This was an epic fail of a
Mhm.
finish. You know,
Yep.
I mean, because yeah, I mean, the first 30 minutes, like you mentioned, like it was actually good hockey. It was a fun team. It was a fun game to watch until maybe that Garnett Hathaway penalty, not the penalty, but after he got taken out of the game, and then the Penguins like just said, okay, it's like it's really hard to put into words because it's just like you got a script already written out together and you're thinking, okay, the Flyers win 4-2, 5-2 to get an empty net, or maybe 6-7, maybe 6-2. And then probably like if I didn't see this game tonight, right? And I said to myself, oh, maybe like okay, the Flyers had a 4-2 lead at the end of two. They probably got two more goals out to make it 6-2, not 5-4 Penguins. Like, I mean, that's ludicrous.
So this just popped in my head, and this is gonna make you sick
Oh,
because it just
I
made me
just
sick.
yeah.
Okay, so the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins have been in heated rivalry for years.
Yes.
And tonight, we talked about a hit that shifted and swung the momentum the Penguins' way.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to a couple years ago when a guy that wore the number 28 laid out Sid the Kid in a
Mm-hmm.
playoff game
Mm-hmm.
in open ice. How that swung the momentum the Flyers' way.
Yep.
It's it happened again, but it bit us this time. And look, I hope, because I'm not sure if we're going to face them again before the end of the season, but I hope, for all the wishes out there that exist, I hope that if we face the Penguins before the end of the season, I hope that Garnet Hathaway has an opportunity to go retaliate and get him a receipt for that hit. Because I'm not saying whether it was clean or dirty, but you know what? When you get hit like that, when you get your marbles knocked around, you want to get your get backs. You know, you want to get your comeuppance. And I think Garnet Hathaway will, because he's a big tough dude. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know,
He'll be like pulling his little Scott Hartnell a little bit
oh
from
yeah.
that. I mean, the only difference is he's not going to get his hair pulled like back what Hartnell did back in 2012. All
But
right.
the Harty is always
Archie was a
swimming.
great guy. He was
Maybe I
good.
should have trimmed that those locks.
Yeah, right. All right. I mean, obviously, well, I guess we don't have any MVPs, so we could just go right into the big
I'll go
finish.
with Mitchkov. That's
Oh
the
yeah, there
only
you go. There you
that's
go.
the 3 points tonight. I go with Mitchkov because he was the only um light out of this whole darkness of a game,
There you go.
because he made me feel like, okay, look, this kid's 20 years old. He's the leading goal scorer for rookies. I mean, I got to do my research. I honestly don't think there's been a rookie score champion for the Philadelphia Flyers in their history. I really don't think there has. I
I
don't
don't
think there's
remember.
been one rookie that has led the scoring in the league. And
Hmm.
Mitchkov has a chance to do that. And I mean, that makes me happy, because it's like, man, we got this guy for the long haul. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But damn it, if we don't have to put some pieces around before we go, because I know you got to get around the league.
Yeah.
Before we go, they mentioned something on Disney Plus, and I wanted to get your quick take on it.
Sure.
Rasmus Ristolainen and Scott Lawton
Uh-huh.
on the trade block. You
Yeah.
know, they talked about that Danny Briere doesn't want to get nothing for those guys, and
Right.
he wants to get something significant. My question to you is, if you had to choose right now,
Hmm.
trade deadline, you're Danny Briere. You can only keep one: Scott Lawton or Rasmus Ristolainen. Who you picking?
Whew, man, Joe, that's a very good question because I obviously I think Lawton probably will be the one guy that will go because I'm not saying that Lawton hasn't shown the capability that he has. I mean, obviously he's good, but he's not great. But Ristolainen is one of those guys that I really like as a defenseman. That he reminds me of a similar kind of like. I think the one thing that you have to do, especially in this league, is that you have to have big defensemen to protect your goaltender, like you always allude to, Joe.
Mhm.
And I think the one thing I want to see out of the Flyers is that look, if we give it a Lawton, okay, maybe that works because I mean I'm not saying Lawton is like the best guy in the
No,
world. I
but I
mean,
mean, I'm backing you in a corner, and I'm saying, okay, look, you got
I
to
got to
keep
go with
one.
Rusto more than Lott's going to admit.
Yeah, I mean, so you would keep Rusto over Lawton, and that's
Yeah,
fine,
I would say yeah, definitely.
because my opinion is kind of similar. Because I honestly feel like going forward with this team,
Hmm.
you need to build up your defense, and
Hmm.
having a tall guy like Roost in that defensive role right
Sure.
now with Sanheim and other guys,
Yeah.
I honestly think like they can build along that.
Yeah.
Um, he might be a guy that like hands the baton off,
Hmm.
but we need someone in the interim, and I think he's worth it. And I think Scott, he's a talented player. I think he'll get a couple picks and maybe a minor leaguer out of
Hmm.
the deal. It'll just be interesting to see how the Flyers play that out.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing with Lawton too, I mean, he's done his job. It's not like he hasn't done
Yeah.
much of anything. It's just that if I had the choice, I had to go with Rusto because defense, like we always like to say, defense wins championships. So it's like the same kind of philosophy in the NHL as well. All right, let's get into it before we wrap up here. Let's get into our final portion of the night. So let's go around the National Hockey League on this Thursday night of NHL action. So a couple games going final right now across the NHL. So there's a couple games that went final before this game went final here tonight. Tampa Bay winning 3-0 over Calgary. The Islanders winning 2-1 over Boston. I saw earlier that Boston had 16 shots and the Bruins. I mean, not the Islanders only had two, and
they scored the first goal.
And they scored the first goal, right? I was just gonna say that.
I saw that. I was like, wow.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So Columbus wins again 5-2 over Detroit, and they'll be back at it again on Saturday for the Stadium Series up at OU at Ohio State's football stadium. At the U, yep. So Montreal winning tonight 4-3 over San Jose. The Hurricanes winning 5-2 over the Sabres, which by the way,
the Whalers.
The Whalers, yeah.
They were out in their old Whalers uniform.
Yeah, dude. You know it.
I love them.
Oh, those jerseys were sweet, man.
Those are so good.
Right. They gotta move back to Hartford, man. I'm telling you. They should.
Yeah.
They really should. So the Blues win tonight 5-2 over Washington. I do not know if Ovechkin scored a goal in that game, so he's still at 882. Stanley Cup rematch of last year. The Panthers winning 4-3 over the Edmonton Oilers. Couple games going final right now too. On the other slate of the games, Nashville wins over Winnipeg 2-1.
Wow.
And Nashville, I mean, I said it earlier in the week that Nashville was a real disappointment, but I feel like they finally woke up a little bit against Winnipeg. So their winning streak ends tonight at either 12 or 13, and they'll play the Flyers on Saturday night in Winnipeg. So, and there's another couple games going on right now. Utah winning 3-1 over Minnesota. The Canucks winning right now 2-0 over Anaheim. And Vegas has a 5-1 lead in the first period against Chicago. Wow.
Oof.
Talk about Chicago being really bad. Oof. And then finally, there's a couple games going on tomorrow. You got the Maple Leafs taking on the Rangers at MSG. Kings taking on the Stars. And then the final portion of the night, it will be the Wild taking on the Avalanche.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game with Detroit and Columbus at the Shoe. It's going to be interesting. More or less because that stadium is huge.
It's big. It's really big.
I think there are going to be people on like the field level, but this could break attendance records.
It could.
The Shoe itself, like just the stands, can hold 100,000 people.
Ooh.
So now put people on the field. This could go to maybe the 120,000 plus. You never know.
This could probably break attendance.
Oh yeah, I mean easily. This could break attendance records.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'm looking forward to that, and you know it's going to be good hockey because I think especially up there, it's still a bit chilly. So you know I know we've been a little bit more milder, so it'll be nice to have a nice little chill in the air. With a nice hot outdoor hockey game.
Let me ask you too. You think they'll bring the cannon from Nationwide Arena? Do you think they'll have a customized cannon for the Blue Jackets when they score?
They could. They honestly could. They could also do. What was it? There's a cannon that goes off at a local college in Ohio.
Right.
It's not Ohio State. It's another local. I think it's a D3 team.
Okay.
And they have like an outdoor cannon, almost kind of like the Buccaneers do.
Oh, and I see.
So I would imagine it would be something like that.
Yeah, I bet.
Blow people's eardrums out. Like,
oh my God, yeah. Can you imagine?
I don't want to be. I don't want to be near like that when they're like, okay, we're gonna fire it. Boom.
Yeah, like the old Revolution War or like this the Tea Party and all that, or like something like that. All right, that's gonna wrap it up here tonight for this portion of the Third Line Jawn Flyers post-game show. I'd like to thank again my good friend Joey Marks once again for joining me here tonight. We will be back again on Saturday morning. We got a jam-packed show on the Pass and Have Sports Show on our sister station, Hardcore Sports Network, with our good friend Mike Loro checking in from It's a Wrap Network. But now for everyone behind the scenes and for everyone that made it work here tonight, for Joey Marks and I guess Pat Bernard behind the glass, but it's only just us numbskulls. But until then, I'm James Scores here saying thanks for watching, everybody. Stay well, everybody. Until then, we will catch you guys later and enjoy the rest of your night. Have a good one.